How were you assaulted?
So I jumped up as well to jump off, be like, whoa, no. And I touched her arm. When I say touched, I mean touched to be like, what are you doing? Turns around, punches me. And I had bulging disc in my back, which I have scans of from a couple of weeks prior. I fell straight back because it was so unexpected. And
Right.
As a male in that situation too, you can't do anything back. So I essentially just covered my head like this. I was on the ground and I just took that. And, my mum was there. Her father was there. Unfortunately, her older daughter was there. And
She knows how to punch. She's a fighter.
I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
Welcome back to another exciting episode of Iron Therapy. I'm Dave Palumbo, joined by our RX Muscle Psychotherapist, Lesley Timbol, and our special guest today, our good friend, Xavier Wills. This is going to be a wild one, I promise you that. And welcome, everyone, to the show.
Good to be here.
How you doing?
Xavier's hair is a little crazy because he just woke up, but this is such an important interview that we got to get it done. And, we talk about incredible stories and trials and tribulations of what you have to go through in life. And the fact that, you got to roll with the punches. And Xavier, I know you haven't really talked about this very much at all. And I don't think a lot of people know what you've been going through, but it's a miracle that you've been able to sustain your channel and continue to do business and function as a human being, given what you've been going through on a personal level.
Yeah, it's been as Lesley has been privy to over the past, how long now? I don't know how long. Over a year now, Lesley, we've been talking and you've been helping me. But yeah, essentially my former partner, the mother of my children, unfortunately faked having cancer. It came out in the media just recently. She's arrested and charged for that. And unfortunately, it's a lot crazier than people will actually know unless unless I've told them privately, like you, Dave, and Lesley and some other people in the industry and people that have promoted it. But yeah, it's currently at the stage now where there's a court date. There's meant to be a court date coming up in August. I haven't been talked to, considering I started the GoFundMe as well, and I got the help of Jay Cutler, Derek Lunsford, Sarah Viegas, multiple other Olympia champions and people in this industry.
Xavier from Desktop Bodybuilding also reached out to you, right?
Yeah.
His wife,
his missus is going through it right now.
Yeah, she's battling cancer.
So I know he has a GoFundMe.
Yeah.
So if we can put up a GoFundMe link.
Yeah, we'll list that on there.
That would be great. I know they're struggling with the surgeries and just trying to get through that. So
to promote this, it's been really, really insane, to be honest. And I haven't seen my children in 20 months. In 5 days' time, it's been 20 months since I've seen my children in person. My son's birthday's tomorrow, and it's been the toughest experience of my life. And there's a lot more to the story than meets the eye, but it's been pretty crazy. And my name has been left out of the media so far, but I know that's obviously something that's coming. With this, with other interviews, with court and all that sort of stuff that's coming in the future. But it's been a very intense experience. That's for sure.
So that she told you that she had cancer. She said she went to the doctor and she was diagnosed with cancer. Is that how it was started, the whole thing?
So I'll go back to the start of that sort of thing. So I've previously, this is something that I've been sort of reluctant to even, I guess, include, because there is still obviously family and stuff, and But I did lose a partner to cancer, and I think we spoke about it, Dave, on a when I first started doing stuff with RX as well. And I was with her for 4 years and went through that. And obviously, the mother of my children obviously knew all of that as well. So that was something that we did break up. We had 2 children, and it was obviously to the point where it wasn't healthy for the children to be around that sort of a relationship. So we broke up. A few months later, she was diagnosed with cancer, and it was seen as a thing where, something that's touched me a lot. So my initial reaction is try to save this person, try to save their life. It's the mother of my children, regardless of what's happened.
So you guys had broken up.
Yeah, we'd broken up.
And was she upset about that? The fact that you guys broke up?
It was a very rough couple of months for me, put it that way. It was she moved out.
Who ended the relationship, you or her, or both of you?
I think at the end of the day it was pretty mutual. It was pretty toxic, and it was it was basically we need to be away from each other. But it was made very tough, I guess. And it was the whole crying, changing over the kids crying, and I was going, what's wrong? And I was obviously worried at that point. And she was apparently diagnosed.
Before she gave you the cancer diagnosis, were you seeing your kids when you guys were split up?
Yeah, so it was doing a 50-50 sort of split at that point. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So everything seemed to be working, and then all of a sudden she calls you up and has this says she's got cancer, right?
Essentially, yeah. She said there was a concern. She had scans, things like that. And obviously, my anxiety with that went through the roof, because I know obviously the reality of what can happen. Someone in the same situation might go, it's super unlikely, you're young, things like that. But obviously going through and seeing a partner in the flesh pass away from something like that makes you realize that that's a real possibility. And I was obviously faced with the idea of, I'm going to be a single father raising 2 very, very young children at that point, potentially. So it was a very intimidating thing. But essentially she was diagnosed with breast cancer. And then it came a week later that she had cervical cancer as well. Went about raising the money because she's a New Zealand citizen. So with Australia and New Zealand, we basically have a sort of a thing where you can live in each country and not be a citizen, but still have a lot of the benefits. But she claimed that treatments outside of the traditional treatments like chemotherapy were, she had to pay essentially full price, which she said was $38,000 to $45,000 for a 10-week round of treatment. And obviously me knowing, my finances at the time and then hers, and I was like, we just don't have that money, especially if it's multiple rounds of this. I'm like, it's just not gonna,
Now let me stop you for a second, because I think a lot of people don't even going to ask this question. Had you gone to the doctor with her at this point, or gone to any appointments, like to talk to the doctor about, treatments and the diagnoses?
No. So this is when COVID was just starting. So I probably shouldn't say that word on here, but it was right when that was kicking off. So I think it was more opportunistic. So it was only one person allowed at the hospital. And the other thing was as well, she was breastfeeding my youngest daughter. So the reason I believe this, one thing, I don't think anyone would ever fake that. But feeling the breast and feeling lumps in it, I believe that was probably most likely something like mastitis from breastfeeding, as she was going to work and going there all day. And it's very common, if you're not expressing the milk, that you will get like clogged ducts, like breast ducts, milk ducts. I felt that. I saw scans. It was all very, believable. Like there's no reason for me to question what was. So
you saw scans with the impressions from the radiologist saying that there was neoplasms and stuff like that in there?
I didn't see the report, but I saw the scan of the breast. So I saw the lumpy looking stuff.
You don't know what you're looking, but you don't know what you're looking at anyway, because you don't have any expertise in that, obviously.
I'm not an oncologist. If someone tells you that's a lump in a scan, I'm probably going to go, wow, yeah, I can see it,
Yeah, I see. So you were duped. You were duped basically by her. Showing the scans, but not the reports. You never saw the reports, in other words.
No, but there were print-offs with like letterheads and things from the hospital that was left on car seats and things like that. So it was quite elaborate, the lengths. So there was no doubt that I was going to believe it, essentially. Yeah.
Gotcha. I want to ask Lesley a question. Lesley, have you ever seen anything like this where someone actually faked cancer to a partner?
Not necessarily cancer, but definitely other kinds of things. And it's obviously to get attention, and there's control and manipulation involved. But what's really disheartening on top of all this, Dave, is that she knew his previous partner died of cancer. And she chose that, not to say deception is good, but she chose cancer of all things. That really shows to you just a glimpse into her character.
Yeah, it's a little scary too. I wouldn't be afraid to fake cancer at all, just because the idea of you might actually get it, because of what you're saying. So, all right, so she convinces you. Let's start a GoFundMe. You put this GoFundMe out there. You get all these top bodybuilders, including me, promoting this thing to raise money for you and your children and her to get through this tough time. And so, what happens from that point on?
So essentially she moves back in where I was living. I was paying for the full rent. I was, not worrying about my income whatsoever. I was training her client, where she was keeping the money, because there was no part of me that was worried about, money. I was just like, whatever I need to get by, save her life, and then worry about things later. It was just sort of like priorities are priorities. As time went on, when we was living, in this house, her attitude towards me got increasingly worse. And which was weird, because I was, massaging her for an hour a day. I was getting her health supplements. I was doing everything I possibly could to make her life as easy as possible, because, obviously stress is a big factor in these sorts of things. And it's just trying to take the load off her. Essentially, the place we were renting, we needed to move out because the owners wanted to live in the place. So we started renting somewhere else. She was the only name on the lease. And essentially she, I believe, decided that she couldn't be around me any longer, because I think it was getting too hard to fake, because I think COVID at certain stages was calming down, and we was able to, potentially I was able to go to the hospital and whatnot. And there was a surgery where, and essentially things blew up, and me and my mother were assaulted. There was police there. It was a whole thing. And then from there,
hold on. You were assaulted. How were you assaulted?
Okay. So essentially, I didn't know which part to skim over, because it is such a long story, but essentially we were breaking up. We were in this new house that we were staying in.
So hold on. So she still has, as far as you know, she still has the cancer diagnosis, but she's driving you crazy. So you're going to break up again?
So 2 days prior, she told me she was having a hysterectomy to have cancer removed. So for those who don't know, a hysterectomy is basically where you have as a female, you have your reproductive system basically removed. So that would stop you from having any other kids, all that sort of stuff. She did have a surgery, so that is 100%. It was not for what she said it was for. So I won't go into detail. She had basically so she can't have children again, but not a hysterectomy. So I won't go into super details about that. And there was there was something there, but there was no cancer. I can assure you there was no cancer, which is why she was charged. But essentially on the way to that surgery, I had to run quickly back inside and grab my wallet or something like that. It wasn't even essential. And it took me maybe 30 seconds. We were really, really early on the way there. Her father was actually over from New Zealand as well. So he was in the car. And on the way to the hospital where I was driving, she was going to make a fight no matter what. Like there was going to be a fight, because she could not have me at the hospital because I asked questions. I'm too involved. I'm going, how
you're going to want to know what the cancer removal is all about. Exactly. Right.
Exactly. So on the way there, she was very, very upset about me having to go back in and get my wallet. We're going to be late, all that sort of stuff. I'm like, well, we're about half an hour early. I don't think we're going to be too late. Essentially we got into a fight. She said, I don't want you there. I don't want you to come back. Don't come. This is my surgery. I'm so stressed. And essentially, I didn't go into the hospital apart from just to drop off food, and then I left straight away. So there was no chance of me interacting with doctors, nurses, or any of this sort of stuff to realize what she was actually having surgery for. So that happened. She got out of surgery 2 days later. We were essentially breaking up, and we were discussing who was taking what and all that sort of stuff. And we had a few, disagreements on who owned what, and things were actually very calm. But I said, look, whatever, keep the couch. And she jumped up and said, whatever, I'm throwing all your shit out. And I jumped up because she started to run from my office. So it's my computers, my laptop, my iMac, my iPad, my cameras, all that sort of stuff. Dave, you know exactly what that is and how much that sort of stuff costs. And if you think someone's going to throw that,
that's
exactly.
Your business. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to have my way of taking money taken away as well. So I jumped up as well to jump up, be like, whoa, no. And I touched her arm. When I say touched, I mean touched to be like, what are you doing? Turns around, punches me. And I had bulging disc in my back, which I have scans of from a couple of weeks prior. I fell straight back because it was so unexpected. And you know, as a male in that situation too, you know you can't do anything back. So I essentially just covered my head like this. I was on the ground and I just took that. And you know, my mum was there, her father was there. Unfortunately, her older daughter was there. And
she knows how to punch. She's a fighter, right?
She's a professional boxer, yeah. So
sure.
I do have a photo of my head that night. So if you wanted to put it up later, you can obviously put that up. So yeah, it was very, very dramatic. My mum had about that much water in a glass. My mum threw the water onto Tara because she's screaming for her to stop. Tara jumps up. She pulls her fist back, hits my mum, but probably just glances the side of her head like that.
Oh my God.
So my mum was, you know, she said it felt bruised on the side of her head, but really it was in a hairline. You can't really see anything. Yeah, and essentially my mum called the police. Half an hour later, you know, I stayed in the house because I'm like, she's going to break all my stuff. And I basically filmed, so I've got all that footage as well. And yeah, essentially we called the police half an hour before she did. She found out we called the police, they called the police. And yeah, essentially it became a thing of he said, she said, and we were out of there. And pretty much things got crazier after that, which is hard to imagine. But yeah, it became to the point where there was fake profiles, there was stalking, there was a lot of things. But that's obviously, yeah, I can just keep talking. But Dave, I don't know if you want to ask any questions based off.
Yeah. So, and how long this altercation went? How long after her supposed cancer surgery was this altercation? How many days?
2 days.
2 days. So she punched you out 2 days after she had theoretically a hysterectomy and all this stuff, which obviously was not the case. Yeah.
Which I found out later, a hysterectomy is a lot more serious.
Of course.
Yeah. But you know, you're naive at the time because you have no doubt what they're telling you is true. And if you see someone recover quickly, I'm like, well, she's very fit.
Right.
You know, you start to just rationalize it in your own head.
Where are your kids at this point?
At this point, essentially, when we break up, it goes to 50-50 custody.
But where are they during this altercation? Is it in the house?
They're in bed asleep, thankfully. But I'm assuming they woke up. But yeah, it was pretty horrible. But they were obviously in other rooms away from all this. And
so you leave. They make you leave, of course, because you're the man. And so you and your mom leave the house. And what happens at that point?
So essentially right then we went to, I found an Airbnb that night and I had to find somewhere to live instantly. So I looked on all the Airbnbs and I found one and I was paying good money for it too. It was like $650 a week or something. And I just paid 2 months at a time up front, essentially just to have somewhere to live where I could have my kids 50-50 and do that. So essentially from that point, I'm having the kids, more than 50% of the time really, because there was incidents and times where she couldn't supposedly have the kids because of treatment and hospital appointments and things like that, which obviously were not true. So I was probably having the kids maybe 60% of the time at that stage. So I'm trying to have my kids 60% of the time. They weren't in any daycare as well. So it was, people were sort of being like, where have you gone for the last 4 days or 5 days on YouTube? And it's like, I've had a 1 and a 2 year old, for 5 days this week or whatever. So it's definitely a challenge with that. But essentially, I moved out. My mum was over there at that time. She actually changed her life and stayed in Perth because of the cancer diagnosis. So she was over, and obviously with all the craziness, she stayed over in Perth with me to obviously help out a little bit as well. But at a certain time with the virus and everything that was happening, she went back. So I was sort of on my own there for a while in Western Australia because I'm originally from Tasmania, for those who don't know. Essentially at that point, eventually after a few months, I started dating someone else, which probably wasn't the best idea when you've got some crazy stuff going on in life. But it was very casual. Went on a date, and after the second date, there's a few things that happened there, but I can go into I can go into detail, but we'll be here all day. But before the second date, essentially, my phone started to blow up, and that's when a whole stalking thing happened. And that's when I started to get suspicious about the cancer being fake, because there was talk of her having chemo, but she had her hair put in braids on one side. And I thought that's a weird thing to do. I don't know about women's hair, but pulling your hair tight when you're having chemo doesn't, to me, sound like a good idea. And there's just a few other things that just sort of were like little like warning bells. So, and we've also, I started dating this girl and her ex-partner showed up at a house and go, who the F is Xavier Wills? And very aggressively. You start to get worried. So that's at that point I went to police, and this was the start of September. I believe it was the 2nd of September, 2021. And I basically notified them of that. They said they couldn't do anything about the stalking, but they said they would look into the GoFundMe and the fake cancer and all that.
Right. So when did you definitively realize that the cancer was fake? At what point did you was the aha moment where you actually had the real evidence?
That came a lot later. So through all this time, Tara and I actually ended up getting back together. Because I did go to police, and they essentially, I was led to believe that she did have cancer. So I was under the impression she had cancer, and I got the big apology as to why. She had some sort of thing where she had so much stress from having 2 children, plus having the cancer that, hormonally her body was going through a lot. So it made her moods different. And I got the big apology. And then the dream of me being around my kids all the time, having the family back together was a dream that was sold to me. You know what I mean? So it was what I wanted. And I never wanted to be from a family as well, where it was a broken family. It's something you don't, in your future, you don't go, oh yeah, I'm going to have 2 kids and me and the mother are going to break up and go our separate ways and I'll see them half the time. Like it's not the ideal story. So yeah, that's what I wanted. I wanted to be a whole family, but yeah, essentially, yeah, we got back together, and then at some point I realized the cancer was fake. We broke up, and I subpoenaed the hospital records where I found out everything essentially. Yeah.
Oh wow. What was done with all that GoFundMe money? What was it, like 25 grand or something like that?
Yeah, it was a lot more than that. That's the other thing as well. That I believe will come out. That it's a lot more. So they're saying $37,000. It was a lot more than that. They're saying police have said they can't do anything about the private donations, but I believe that things can be done about the private donations from the information I've got, and also the text messages and all the other things as well. So I think it's going to be a lot more than that. There was a car purchased, a Ford Ranger. There was also, I believe, I was told they were gifts, but there was 2 jet skis, which she later sold for, I think, $25,000.
Oh, wow.
Jet skis plus a trailer. And there was a lot of, toys. So, like when, I don't want to say, I was going to associate something then, but I don't want to make too many claims. But, when people have money and they tend to buy toys, jet skis and things like that, it's, they've got to spend their money on something. So, yeah, essentially that's what I think it sort of was. And there was a lot more little things purchased, electric scooters, things like that. And it's a lot of money.
So you never had access to that money. That went directly to her. Is that how it worked?
Correct. Yeah. So she sent me, she's like, you got some of that money too. And I think she's trying to essentially implicate me. It was $350 she gave me, but I trained her client for 6 months and probably made her maybe $9,000. And I used my own car too. So I made a net loss, Dave, on that. So I trained her client twice a week, and it was not just training a client. It was going to pick him up from his house, driving him to the gym, driving him home. So it was a 3-hour process each time, twice a week. So I was doing 6 hours of work for her a week for 5 months.
Right.
And I got $350 for it.
Wow. Having heard all this, I'm actually, and I know the story. So, and I've been traumatized for you just hearing the story as it's been progressing over the last couple of years. Lesley, what do you, obviously you've been, that's privilege, what you talked to Xavier about, but how do you advise someone like this? Like, how do you even pull someone out of this like a funk? I mean, this is a serious like scam that was been played on this guy's emotions and his, using his children and tugging on every emotional, drawstring that he possibly has. How do you pull someone out of that, from a point of view of the psychologist?
Well, you don't fight lunacy with lunacy. So basically the behavior that she continues to, even today, demonstrate. It's controlling the controllables, and it's managing what you can do versus focusing on what you can't do. Being apart from his kids has been absolute torture, understandably so, but it's relishing what he can do. We're talking about what he can do, obviously when he gets reunited with the kids, but it's, having that, if anything, a purpose, because that's actually what's keeping him strong. All right. So a lot of things that we talk about with Xavier is more about self-care strategies, some stress management, managing sleep, even when he can't sleep, as far as what he can do. And it's usually get up. I mean, be functional if you can't sleep anyway, and be productive. So we were talking about doing, various things about what you can control, because it's very easy to get caught up with all the things you can't do, including seeing his kids or talking to his kids, or the time he does talk to his kids, how that's being sabotaged by her. So yes, it's easy to get frustrated, but there's also other ways to manage that frustration, get back on track, and getting support is absolutely essential.
Let me ask you a question. When did the breakdown occur where she stopped letting you see the kids? Because it was 50-50. You said even when you guys were broken up. Where did the disconnect come from?
So essentially, we got back together. We moved to Tasmania. There's a lot to this story, and there's parts of it I'll sort of leave out, so I don't make this story, 3 hours long. But essentially, we were down here, and there were things put in place, so she was able to leave Tasmania and then go back to Western Australia with the children. And either I had to make a decision to go back there or to stay in Tasmania and try to get my children back. I didn't feel like it was a smart idea or safe for me to go back to Western Australia for several reasons. Now, I'm someone who is an incredibly dedicated father, and I don't need to try to convince other people of that, and Lesley knows. And the only reason I've really, to be completely honest, I've put my life at risk to try to get my children back over this past nearly 2 years now since that happened. And it's been, incredibly trying. So I've just been trying to do whatever I can behind the scenes to get that to happen and to bring this to justice, essentially, because I don't think anyone should get ripped off and give their hard-earned money. People gave thousands of dollars. It's not something that anyone should get ripped off with. But especially when there's children involved, and I feel like they're being used as pawns in essentially a game, which is, something that's been heartbreaking, because I know the way I care about my children. I was obviously having them for over 50% of the time. And that essentially is where the breakdown went, where I lost my kids and haven't seen them in person since. There has been FaceTime. There has been orders put in place where I've had, FaceTime 3 times a week and things like that. But as Lesley sort of mentioned, it's been sort of manipulated, and I've been sort of emotionally played with, on a nearly a daily basis for 2 years, and even before then, really. But without my kids, that's been the most heartbreaking part of all of it. Yeah.
But so you feel that if you go to Western Australia, where you were living with her and sharing custody, you feel that your life is in danger?
Yeah, I feel like, definitely my life is in danger. And also, Lesley, I suppose we don't know how much we're going to exactly go into this, but the things that I've sort of uncovered through, subpoenaing hospital records, through seeing text messages, through talking to other people, it just didn't seem like it was a smart idea for me to go back to Western Australia. Either if my life was at risk, whether it was my life at risk, or whether I was just in danger of being harmed, or it was something else being set up or something like that. I just didn't feel like it was a good idea. I don't feel like that was the best idea for me for getting my kids long term, or getting them to a safe situation where I feel like they'll be looked after long term as well as possible. And that's my whole goal with all of this. It's not, it's not about me going like, oh, well, I want my kids back. Obviously I do want my kids back, but it's about giving them the best future possible and getting them in a situation where they're cared for, where they're looked after, where essentially they've got all the right care. And that's all for me. That's all this whole thing has ever been about. Obviously people want to hear the, you know, the GoFundMe story and all that sort of stuff. But for me, the whole goal has been essentially saving my kids, you know, along the way. It's gone from trying to save someone from passing away from cancer to essentially saving my kids. So it's been a journey that's been very emotionally draining across the way, because it's obviously reliving some past trauma for me through the cancer side of things. And then obviously my kids are my world, you know, Dave, you know, anyone who has children, that is a great father, you know, and that cares about your children genuinely, you know how heartbreaking that is. And that's the one thing that can be taken away or messed with in some sort of a way that will emotionally destroy you. You know, it's like they're the people that you care about that are out there that you just want to, you would do anything for, but there's orders, there's things in place that stop you from being able to care for them like you should be able to as a parent. And that's the most heartbreaking thing for me in this whole thing, to be honest. Like, yes, I've been manipulated. I've had these things that have been done to me on a, you know, like I said, daily basis nearly. But that, you know, I would do it all over again, as hard as it would be, just to, if my kids' safety or anything was in jeopardy. And yeah, that's how I feel like things have been. And it's, it's just unbelievable. I suppose that someone's been able to do this for this period of time. And as Lesley and I have discussed it, as I've discussed with many other people, had I done the same thing, I reckon I'd be caught within about a week. And this has taken, you know, nearly 3 years now for the police to take some sort of action, which after they found out initially and decided to close the investigation. And as it says on the news, you know, the man who started the GoFundMe, you know, begged the police commissioner to reopen the case. It's like, you know, I had to do whatever was necessary to, you know, potentially get custody of my kids again. So yeah, I just did what was essential in that case. And it's never, but I think the thing that people get confused with is that maybe I'm a vengeful ex, you know what I mean? And it's not that whatsoever. It's not about revenge. It's about justice and doing the right thing and getting the right result for the right people. And those people are my kids. And getting the right result is getting them to a loving family, somewhere where it's controlled, where there's no yelling, where it's, you know, it's a calmer environment where they can grow up and have a normal childhood. Because I know now from me having to go to the levels to get this story out there, this is going to affect their lives forever. You know, like we forget when we're younger, we didn't have social media to deal with. But if there was a story on TV about some kid's mother or some kid's father, even if it was 5-10 years ago, you will hear that and people will know about that. And this will follow my kids. And I hate that. I hate every part of that. But if they're in a good environment and that story follows them, I think it's a lot better than being in a bad environment and being at some sort of risk. So, yeah. Sorry, I went on for a while there.
Lesley, in summation here, I guess, you know, because I know the story gets even more convoluted, but, you know, Xavier can't talk about certain parts of it at this point because it's still ongoing. How do you advise someone who is, and it doesn't have to just be Xavier, but anyone who's going through something like this where they have to, like, it's almost like deferred gratification type of thing, because you want something so bad, but you can't get it, but you have to kind of just survive daily anyway and do your job and get through the day. What's the best advice?
Well, especially in this industry, I it's look at it as a competition at the end of the day. And you look at the end goal and you work backwards to saying one day he's going to be reunited with his kids. I have no doubt in my mind of that. And then it's trying to say, okay, how do I get there? What are the steps I need to take to get there? Now, we all know that unfortunately the courts favor women and men. So many fathers are denied either access or there's a lot of gaslighting that happens, brainwashing that happens on the kids' part, like from let's say in this case, the mother's part onto the kids to say how horrible their father was and all this other kind of stuff. But as far as how, people like Xavier can get through this, one, support is really important. Being able to be grounded, being able to figure out what you can control, what you can do. Now, sometimes the hands are tied. There are some men that don't have access to their kids, unfortunately. And it's in time, do the kids grow up knowing what, let's say in this case, the mothers are capable of and make their own conclusions and reestablish a connection with their father? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. but it's to say, what is within my control? What can I do? And work, like I said, backwards. So for Xavier, he's going to be reunited with both his kids, and it's working backwards on how to get there. It's also good for his motivation of something to fight for, because it's easy to give up when when you're fighting such an immense battle. And again, we can't go into the full details of this, but this is more than just his ex. When you go through against such an intense battle, and complicated one, it can become really overwhelming, and you feel lost. You feel like, why bother? You just want to put your hands up and go, why bother? And he's got 2 really good reasons of why he's going to be bothering.
Yeah, it's it's admirable what you're going through it, because to have to like suck it up every day, knowing that you can't be with the people you want to be with, your children, it's tough. And you've been doing your job, and you're still reporting on bodybuilding, and and you're still doing everything you got to do to support yourself. And obviously, are you having to pay child support? How's that working at this point?
Yep. Still even still paying child support now to this day.
Wow.
So she's been arrested, charged, and that's been a hard thing, because I suppose I couldn't say this. I've been stolen from. There's been many occasions and many crazy stories. And as Lesley and I have discussed, and as I've discussed with you, Dave, you've said you've gone, holy shit. You said, but this is like a movie. This is like a series. It's not something that can be explained in half an hour, 40 minutes, or even an hour. It's there's a million. I could explain one of the stories, and it would take me an hour to do, and that's one day, of something that happened. So it's very, very. It's a very surreal experience to go through. And like you and Lesley were sort of talking about, it's a day-to-day thing, because it's not the challenge of, it's been, you can say, it's been 19 and a half months, but the reality of that 19 and a half months is a lot more than just, get through it a month at a time or whatever. It's like that month is tough. That 1 month is tough to get through. That one day sometimes is tough to get through, waking up in the morning, and then that's the one thing that I found. Lesley and I have discussed this a fair bit. Waking up in the morning and almost realizing the reality of your situation and where your life is at. That's the thing that I started to find really tough, where you've got these forces, people against you, and there's a lot more than one that don't necessarily, they don't have your best interests at heart, and they don't want you to be succeeding. So you're fighting against so much when you're already fighting against so much before that. You know what I mean? So you're fighting against forces, and then you're fighting against your own emotions. You're fighting against all that sort of stuff emotionally. And it's just been very difficult to do the basic, because things start to feel, I understand now so much more about, I think, mental health through Lesley and what she's told me, and what other people go through, and how just doing the monotonous stuff, getting up and brushing my teeth. It's like, you never would think that would be something you'd think about. It's a instinct to have it. You get up and do it, but to do it sometimes when you're going through something really, really tough, just to do those basic things and have that motivation to get up and keep doing it and keep going when you're not getting the desired result of getting your kids, and it's taken a year and a half. I understand why men eventually give up, and women in these situations too, because I'm not saying it's only men, but at a certain point, you become exhausted. Like you get emotionally drained. You are just like, I'm exhausted. And thank God, I thank Lesley so much. Like after every appointment we have, I'm like, thank you so much. Thank you. Because you think you're fine. You think that it's not going to make a difference talking to a psychologist or a psychotherapist. You think that it's like, it's not going to change the situation, because talking to someone, what does that do? It's not as men, you think very much outcome based. So if I talk to her, what outcome am I going to get? Oh, I feel better. Who cares? It's not changing the situation. It's like, no, it actually does, because it makes you see things clearly. So with Lesley, like the other day, sometimes I think, I wouldn't mind talking to her about this. But then I talk to her, I'm like, oh my God, my perspective on everything has changed now. This is clear. Okay, if I was wondering, should I do this or this? She was like, well, how about we prioritize it? We put it like this, and we'll do that, because if we do that, and she'll give a different perspective, And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And then we have a plan in place, puts my mind at ease. And it's just, she's been a godsend, honestly, an absolute godsend. And without Lesley, I don't know where I would be now in terms of how far along this would be. So it's something where I've told Lesley, I'm like, after all this, I'm like, I am forever grateful you will get, because she's been helping me out for free, totally for free, me and my mother as well, because my mum's been involved in this and she's been through a hell of a lot as well. So Lesley, if anyone needs any help, now Lesley hasn't asked me to do this, or you haven't, Dave, but reach out to Lesley, because she's done so much for me and so much for people in this industry without any direct return from it. So people, please support Lesley. She's awesome at what she does. I'll tell you that much.
Just wait till you get that GoFundMe back. You might get a bill in the mail. We gotta have a little humor in this episode. I don't
exactly. Dave,
suicide after watching this thing.
Yeah, it's pretty deep. It's and that's pretty the thing. Like, I think because it's been so long as well. Like, it is obviously such a serious situation, but it's been so long. Like, it's like the I was speaking to my mum about this the other day. I said it's like people who go to you see a family. This is actually quite morbid, but you see a family at a funeral and they're the closest ones to the person, and they're not crying a lot of the time, and all these other people are weeping. It's like because they've been through already the week of dealing with it every day, every minute. And people just go to the funeral, they've thought about it once or twice, and then they've been able to go to the funeral, and then obviously the emotions come out. So it's sort of like, for me, I've been through this every minute of every day. This has been my sole focus of life. There's been nothing else that I've been focused on more than this. So I've had so much time to deal with it that at the end of the day, sometimes, like Dave, you laughed about it. Like, you have to laugh about it, because if you're not having some sort of a joke with it, it gets too, it's too much.
That's why bodybuilding is a good distraction, because you can kind of like get lost in that whole, drama-filled world, and it really is meaningless, right? Because it's all just professional stuff. There's no personal stuff involved, and so it's a nice distraction for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's great to be able to get on a live and discuss if Beiruz's legs are too small for his upper body, and whether Nathan's balance and density should have beaten him. It's like,
forget about your problems first for 20 minutes.
Exactly. And Lesley's been brilliant at advising as well, because I was someone who was like, using distraction, you're weak. You know what I mean? That's what I was thinking. I was thinking you're weak to use distraction. Lesley's actually taught me things. It's fine to use distraction. You're going through so much stress right now. Right. You need a distraction. I'm like, so it's fine for me to listen to a podcast and go for a walk for 45 minutes in my work day? And she's like, yes, you'll probably be more efficient afterwards, because your mind is like loaded full of stuff, and it's going. Yeah. And I'm someone by nature, like, I don't know if people can pick up on it through my channel or through this interview. My voice wants to go at 1,000,000 miles an hour. Like, I want to just get this story out, and I feel like I may be wasting people's time. So I always want to just get it out really quick. But I've sort of, I've learned to slow myself down, breathe. I'm someone who has to meditate. Naturally, I'm going to be slightly more anxious. You
want to vomit it out, is because it's nauseating. So you want to,
And I've held it in for so long too that there's so much that just goes around and around. I'm just like, as soon as I start talking about it. But I imagine if I'm talking about this in the future, because this is the first interview that I've done about any of this, it's probably going to get easier. But at the same time, I needed this safe environment with Dave. I know you, Lesley, obviously I know you both very well. I needed this to be able to be calm enough to talk about it. So I'm glad we were able to do this for the first time together here, rather than doing it with someone I don't know and them asking very weird questions and random questions. So thank you.
I know Xavier for almost 15 years now. Isn't this crazy, Lesley?
Well, you stayed at my house
since he's 19.
You stayed at my house.
Wow.
Yes, but I'm saying, you 19 when we first started working together?
Yeah, I'm 34. Yeah. Was I 19? I was
19. Yeah, you were 19.
Like
wow.
You're 19. Yeah.
Crazy.
I remember Dave. Lesley. He was like he didn't even talk really much. Now I can't shut him up.
Now things have changed.
Yeah. Well, Xavier, thank you so much for being so honest and sharing your story. I'm sure there's a lot of people that can relate to it, or maybe not to the extent, but can relate to what you're going through with your children and stuff like that. And Lesley, of course, thank you always for your great insights into the situation. If anyone wants to contact Lesley, I highly encourage you to do so. She's great. She's a very good listener, and she gives excellent advice.
Thank you, Dave.
And on that note, we're going to wrap things up today. And if Xavier has more information for us, we'll get him back on for an update in the future. Good luck with the kids and well, you're going through right now. And what about if you? What should we tell people who did donate money to the GoFundMe? Is there going to be a refund, or what's happening with that?
So reportedly, GoFundMe said everyone will be refunded. So,
That's beautiful.
but they said they're starting that process, and this was a few weeks back. And as far as I know, no one's been refunded apart from the people that initially complained, and it was within the 12 months and things like that. But people have been knocked back refunds previously. So yeah, they have said people are getting refunded. So there was 579 people that donated.
Wow.
So,
all right.
And there's a lot of private ones too, but that's another story for another day.
Right. All right. Well, guys, if you did get a donate money to Xavier's cause and his wife's cause, and
feel free to contact
money back, you can contact GoFundMe, or hopefully they'll just be doing it automatically. So,
yeah.
On that note, thank you for joining us again today. Thank you, Lesley Timbol. Thank you, Xavier Wills. I'm Dave Palumbo. We'll see you next time.
Take care, guys.